Hello, this is the first video in a series where I will show you how to make some special crochet motifs that can be used in some interesting different ways. In this video, I will show you how to make the small square motifs you see in this rainbow bobble scarf. But the interesting thing about these squares is that they're not sewn together. Instead, they actually button together. And since the squares button together, this means you can easily modify the scarf anytime you want. For example, you can make it longer by adding more squares on, buttoning them in, or shorter by taking some of the squares off. You can even join the two ends together if you wanted to make a sort of a long cowl. Check out my Instagram for more ideas on ways you can use these squares, as I'll be adding some updates soon. More good news is that these projects are good stash busters. Not only can you use up any scrap yarn you may have, but as you will see, you can also put to use other craft items that are not typically used for crochet. For example, this scarf uses a 3-ply or fingering weight cotton for the white squares. But for the colored squares, I've actually used stranded cotton. So if you have a pile of this stranded cotton laying around that you don't know what to do with, this is the perfect project for you. Another advantage of, not only busting your cross stitch stash is that you look at all the different colors you can get. The range is pretty good, and I've just arranged the colors according to the color spectrum in this scarf, which is probably the easiest way to arrange colors. But of course, use your imagination, do anything you like. If you do decide to use stranded cotton, then there are a couple of things to think about. First of all is finding out if you have enough thread. Each of the squares, as I've made them in the scarf, use approximately 5 meters or 5.5 yards of this stranded cotton. And since there are about 8 meters per skein, or 8.7 yards in each skein, that means that I used approximately 36 skeins for my scarf, or the equivalent of that. So make sure you have enough. Also, if you have some partially used skeins laying around where you've already wound some off for a cross stitch project, that's okay, to use too. A good way to use up your bits and pieces. If you're not 100% happy with the blends of colors that you have straight out of your sewing basket, you can also blend two colors together. To easily do that, split one skein by pulling on, remember we're starting at the long end, just pull off a length there, and grab a clothespin and secure the skein so that it doesn't want to pull out anymore. And then pull your strands apart. There are 6 strands, so you want 3 strands in each hand. There we go. And start separating the strands. But as you can see, quite quickly, things start twisting and tangling up, and that can be a real mess. But if you just let the clothespin do its work, just lift it up and let the weight of the clothespin make the skein spin around, well, that alleviates the tangling. So just go bit by bit and do a little bit more. Just let the clothespin do the work, and you'll end up with 3 strands here and 3 strands there. Once the skein is separated, You can join the two ends together using your favorite joining method. I just use a ordinary knot like that, and I cut it as close as I can to the knot, and that gives me 10 meters in this color instead of just 5. And to make things easier, I strongly suggest winding onto bobbins. I've got this one that I guess knitters normally use for Fair Isle, or you might have this kind from your cross stitch toolbox. That's fine too. Just remember, when you're ready to crochet, you're going to hold this total of 6 strands together and work it as one thread. And if we're using partial skeins or bobbins, when one color runs out, it's okay then to just grab the next color and tie that on and keep going. Now I'd like to show you how to actually crochet the square. As you can see, it is just a very simple little motif. Up in the left-hand corner there, we've got our bobble, which is our kind of our bobble button. It's actually quite sturdy, and that's what we will use to button the squares together. In the other 3 corners is a chain 3 space, and that's going to be our buttonholes or button loops. So this is a pretty straightforward square. If you want to do it in the traditional way, I've made the pattern available on Ravelry, and I'll put the link in the description. The only thing that you might not have seen before is how I'm making the bobble, so if anything, pay attention to that. But for now, I'm actually going to show you how to do it with my breakaway techniques. Now to crochet this square for the demonstration, I'm using a thicker yarn just so that you can see what I'm doing. And as you'll see, there are some advantages to using my techniques over the traditional ways. Okay, so start off with about 6 or 8 inches of a tail. You don't want to start with your hook right at the end. You want to leave some room up here. I'm not even going to start with a slip knot. Instead, I'm going to go straight into some yarn overs. So yarn around once, hang on to it, yarn around again, hang on to it, 3, and this is where we start pinching to make our floating ring. So pinch there, hold on again, so hold on to all those 4 loops at the top and pinch the 2 on the bottom. Yarn over and draw through those 2 loops to make the floating ring. The first stitch of the first round is a double crochet in US terms. So let's pull through 2, pull through 2. Now that might be kind of technically challenging to some of you. So if it is, and you'd rather start with a slip knot, there's a slight difference. You still want to leave a bit of a tail behind the hook. You still want a bit left there. But if you're starting with a slip knot, just need to go yarn around once and then make the floating ring. Yarn around, pinch, and pull through 2 to make the floating ring. Pull through 2, pull through 2 to make the double crochet. And I'm going to take that off and start again, and you'll see why. Yarn around, pinch, yarn around, pinch, pull through 2, pull through 2, pull through 2. There are 12 double crochets in the first round, so I'm going to continue making double crochets into my floating ring. But as you can see, it's It's gotten a little bit baggy, my floating ring. It's going to be a little bit too big. So here's my answer to the magic circle. To make that ring smaller, just grab onto the first stitch here either side and pull on the tail, and that will tighten your ring up a little bit. You don't want it super tight, because we still have some more stitches to go in there. But that is your advantage to starting without a slip knot for this motif. So I'm just going to go ahead and put 12 more, or go until I have 12 double crochets in this round. Now I'm at the beginning, so let's close the round with a slip stitch. And the next round begins with a treble. And this is, again, my breakaway method, where we're going to use the tail to help us load the hook up to make that treble without doing yarn overs. So grab your tail, and we're going to wrap around from front to back 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Now we're ready to do our pull throughs. Pull through 2, pull through 2, pull through 2. And that is the kind of their first stitch of that sort of corner. So this is going to be one side of a corner. You'll see what I mean once I get going. Okay, so there's a treble in that stitch, 2 more double crochets in the same stitch, 1 double crochet in the next stitch, and now we're at the other corner. So let's do all in that same stitch. We're going to do 2 double crochets and a treble. There's 2 yarn overs. And those 7 stitches are a side. So do that on all 4 sides, starting in the next stitch in our treble. Again, the instructions are written out if you'd like to download that from Ravelry. As usual, at the end of the round, close with a slip stitch. And now round 3 is where we do our buttonholes and our bobble that serves as a button. The first stitch of this round is a single crochet, and again, take your tail, load up the single crochet by just wrapping around once. Yarn over, pull through 2, that's the first single crochet on this side. Work 6 more, or a total of 7 along this side. Work the first buttonhole by doing a chain 3 and a single crochet in the same stitch as the last single crochet. So that's going to be how you do 3 of the corners. Let's do the next side. We work 7 more single crochets. For the last side, again, we need to work our 7 single crochets. Okay, so 7 single crochets. Now let's work the bobble. This has got a lot of steps to it, so I wanted to make sure I go over this. First thing to do is to chain 2, work an incomplete double crochet into the first chain. So that means yarn over, go through that first chain, and 1 strand's okay. Yarn over, go through 2, but leave the last pull through on the hook. Don't need that yet. Now we're going to work 5 incomplete double crochets around the chain 2. So to do that, it's yarn over and go underneath that chain 2, pull back up, yarn over, pull through 2. So that's 1 incomplete double crochet, and we do that until we've done 5 of them. One last little step, no yarn over, just go straight under, grab the yarn and pull it back up. And now we're going to pull through all those loops on the hook. Sometimes it goes in one hit, sometimes you might have to take some bites at it. But, ooh, I got lucky. It went all the way through, so that's got to be good luck. And just to seal the deal, you do a slip stitch around the base of the bobble. So just go underneath, grab the yarn, pull that straight through, tighten that up, and that's our button made. To finish the round, do one more single crochet in that corner, so the last same place as the last single crochet, and slip stitch to finish off. And end off the yarn, which is something I usually don't like to do. That's why I've done my breakaway method, so I don't have to cut yarn. But since this project uses lots of different colors, there's no choice. Okay, so I've ended off the yarn, and because we used our breakaway technique, what's happened is both strands, the tail and the working yarn, were carried up together without really much effort at all. Okay, so that's going to make it easy to weave in the ends. Well, one thing I like to do to make the square a little bit more secure, so I like to tie the ends together first into either a granny knot or square knot, whichever, doesn't really matter. That just reassures me that things are going to stay there, especially since if that bobble gets a lot of use, then we don't want things to come apart there. Alright, now the needle, if you can, I would suggest using one with a kind of a point on it rather than a blunt darning needle, because we're going to have to go through some thick areas and you'll need to penetrate. So I'm going to actually thread the needle with both strands, and I'm going to work those two strands as if they were one. So to start weaving, just grab a couple strands from directly underneath the bobble just to get our threads more in position where they need to be. And now go just straight up through the guts of the bobble. Pull that through. And that's why we needed a kind of a sharp point to get through there. And come back down. Pull that through and clip close to the bobble there. And there, that was about as painless as I can think of a way of finishing off the ends of our little square. Now it's time to join the little squares together. And before that, I need to talk about the arrangement that you need to put them in before you do so. These little paper squares represent one of our squares, where that black dot is the bobble and the other three sides are the button loops. Okay, so it's important to have the bobble going the same way or same orientation in each square. In this case, I've got it in the northwest corner, and that ensures the best way to get the most corners joined up. Notice the top half here. There's a bobble there to join that edge and that one there. But this is kind of where things go a little bit different. There's not a bobble here or here. So there's no join in those two spaces. So to solve that problem, I have also included instructions for making a kind of a detachable bobble, which is basically a chain 6 ring with a bobble attached. I don't really think I need to show you that here, but it is in the instructions if you'd like to double check how to make one of those. So every time there's where there's not a join, we can add in one of these little detachable bobbles. So here I've actually pulled some of the squares off of the scarf I showed you earlier. So I'd just like to show you how to go through joining actual squares together. So here I have them all oriented with the bobble in the top left hand corner, and I also have a pair of tweezers which will help immensely, and I've got 2 detachable bobbles which I'll put on as well. Okay, so this really is pretty straightforward. Just decide what you're going to join up first. Put your tweezers through the buttonhole, grab one of the bobbles, squeeze together and pull that through. So that's one side done. Now we can put this one on, that same bobble. Let's go through the buttonhole, pull that bobble again through this buttonhole, and the same with the last one. And mind you, my buttonholes are kind of stretched out because I've been playing around with this quite a lot. So your button loops in the beginning might be a little bit tighter because they haven't stretched out yet. So just be patient until you've worked with them for a little bit. Okay, so now we've got a gap here, but fortunately there's a bobble there. So we can put that through. There's a gap, but fortunately there's a bobble there. And as I said before, we've got a gap here with no bobble, so let's use one of our detachable bobbles. So to use the bobble, find the 2 buttonholes and put the tweezer through both of those loops, and grab the chain 6 side of the bobble, pull that through the buttonholes, and then go through the chain 6 ring with your tweezer, and grab the bobble and pull that over like that. And that gives us a kind of a seamless solution for closing that edge. Same down here. Go through both buttonholes, grab the 6 chains, pull that through, the tweezer through the loop, grab the bobble and pull it through. And now I can, I won't bore you with it now, but I can attach that back onto my scarf, and I'm back in action like I was before. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe. It helps me a lot. And again, check my Instagram. I've got a lot more ideas for these squares to use in other projects. So I hope to see you again soon.